This da, as they say in my part of the world, and welcome from me, Martin Smith, aka Cornish Grandad, to my YouTube channel. I trust you're well and interested in learning the fundamentals of Blender. Today we'll add a couple of chairs to our kitchen scene as we begin to build it up into a proper scene. We've only got a table at the moment, but we'll start by finding a reference image so we can model the chair, create the chair seat. We'll introduce modifiers, specifically the mirror modifier to create the chair legs. And once we've created our chair legs and given it some fundamental colors, we'll tidy up our file by naming our collections so they have logical names. At the end of our previous session, we'd created this table, which is now sitting forlornly in the middle of our kitchen. Today, we're going to add some more furniture to start building up our scene, specifically a couple of chairs. I searched the internet for some rustic looking chairs, and I found this particular model from a company called Skulm. The thing I like about it is it gives me the dimensions, so I know the seat is 40 centimeters square and that the front legs are 43.5 centimeters tall, and sometimes it's useful to have a reference picture. So I'm going to pull this picture into my scene just by grabbing it and dropping it in there. Dragging my Skulm wood chair into my scene. There we have it. Let's make it a bit small. It's far too big. And the immediate thing you'll notice is that it's actually not parallel to the axis. Why is that? Well, if we look at our transform panel, which is N, you can see the location and rotation are all over the place. And this is a common issue we'll have in Blender. If things don't work, sometimes the best thing to do is with an item selected, go to Object, Apply, set all transforms, and notice everything's set to 0. Picture appears to disappear. That's because it's lying on its back now. It's at the same level as the floor. So if we rotate it, say on our x-axis, there we go, it's reappeared. Exactly what we wanted. So let's scale that back down again. Roughly the size, we'll bring it up so it's sitting on our plane, and what we want is it's slightly behind the x-axis we've got now. So when we build our chair around this point, we've got the picture right behind it. Okay, the next thing I think we want to do is just move the table out of the way. Remember, it's parented, so if we grab the top, everything should move. So we grab and just slide that out of the way for a minute. There we go. Okay, so on the front face view, so either your number keypad, or in my case, the open quote mark, we'll do a front view. We want this scale to be roughly 43.5. It doesn't have to be. Well, how do I know it's 43.5? Over here I have a measurement tool. So if I click on that and I click on the top and the bottom, it says that's 62. So let's scale this down a bit more, roughly to about there. Let's see how good my measurements are again. We'll click on that and remeasure that. There we go, that'll do. It doesn't have to be precise. To get rid of all these are some previous ones I did. If we just click up here in the selection box, they apparently disappear. And I just want to grab this and I'll move it so it's a bit more square. So that's roughly what we want. The first thing to do is we're going to create this seat, which we know is 40 centimeters square. I think probably the best object to start with is a plane. And down here we can set that to 40 cm. Enter that, there's our plane. Great. Just have a look a bit. Obviously we need to bring it up, so grab, and we'll just keep everything on our origin point, so we'll bring it up to about there. And clearly the next thing we want to do is give it a bit of thickness. So if we use tab into edit mode, so tab, we want to have face selected, which should be 3. We want to right click and extrude faces and just go up a little bit on the Z-axis, and that looks about right. we now have our seat. Great. So I guess the next thing to do is do a front leg. So I want to be, if I add it in edit mode, of course it'd be directly attached to this, and I don't want that at the moment. So I'm going to tab into object mode. I'm going to add mesh cube, and from our picture we know it needs to be 43.5 centimeters. That measurement there. Okay, so let's bring this up so it sits on my floor. Grab Z. Get sound effects then. Okay, right. Now we want to scale it in on our everything but the Z axis. So we're going to scale Shift Z, scale it in until it's about the size of our chair. Ooh, it's too small. Okay, do it by eye. It's about right. Now we can position this exactly we want. So I'll go back to front face. I'm going to grab that and I'm going to slide it just on this. Grab it, move it just on the X-axis. It's about there. Let's look at the side view. Do exactly the same. Grab just on the Y-axis. It's about there. That looks good. And now we can just move this down a fraction, and I want it so it just, the table leg just eats into the top of this, because I don't want to see a join at any point. So great, I'm beginning to do my chair. So we can now do the back leg. So let's start with this one, so it'll be the same size. So we can right click and duplicate object, turn, so I don't want to move it yet, and then I want to grab that and slide it back on the Y-axis, and this one I want so it's at the back edge of this thing. Okay, so, and I guess the next thing I want to do is I want to put a rail between these two, so we could use another plane. I think add mesh plane. There it is. Let's rotate that around the Y-axis to bring it up. Okay, let's scale that in a bit, and we'll scale it just on the Z. That feels about right. We grab that, slide that up, slide it back. A little bit big on that axis, but it doesn't matter because it's all going to disappear inside the chair in a minute. I think before I slide it across, I'm going to give it a bit of width. So I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to audio and face mode. Get rid of that gizmo. We'll extrude faces. Make sure we just extrude on the Y-axis. Well, that's not right. That was my mistake. Just extrude on the X-axis. So we'll undo that. Control Z. My mistake. Extrude just on the X-axis. Pull it out a bit. There we go. That's better. Now back into object mode with tab. Grab X. Slide it across. Let's just check that it looks right. Yeah, that looks good. Now what I want to do is I can copy this and put it on the other face as well, can't I? So if I right click, duplicate object, if I now rotate it around the Z, Z90, I can then grab this and move it forward on the Y-axis, so I don't want to lose its height position. too happy with its position. Slide it along its x-axis. So, beginning to build up my chair. Now what I want to do is I want to extend this chair back up and taper it to get this back legs of the chair. So I want to go into edit mode and grab that top face. I can't because the seat's in the way. Can't actually see that face at all. So if we go back into object mode, select the seat. Easiest way of doing this is H for hide. All it's done is hidden it temporarily. I can now reselect this back leg, go into edit mode and select just that top face. Okay. And I want to extrude it up reasonable way to get that height, don't I? Should I bring this picture down a fraction? Let's go into front mode. Let's go back into object mode, so I can grab that, I can put it down, I can see what I'm trying to do. Get that foot roughly there, and that's the kind of height I want to go for. So select my leg again, go into edit mode, select my top face, being selected, then I can extrude just on the x-axis, so right click, extrude faces, just on the z-axis. I think I said the wrong one just then. Bring it straight up. That feels about right. And by a fluke I've actually given it a bit of an angle, which is what I wanted, I think. Actually that's about right. If yours isn't like this, with that top face still selected and looking at the side view, which we are now, then we can just grab on the y-axis and we can change the angle of this seat back, but I think that's about right. The next thing I want to do is I want to scale this back slightly taper it. So we're going to grab it on the s-axis, taper it in a little bit. Whoa! Let's zoom in a bit, that might help. Let's try that again. Size that just on that axis. There we go. I think that probably look about right. What's it looking like? Yeah, there we go. Nice taper on that now. So we're getting there. Let's bring our seat back. So back into object mode. If H was to hide, Alt is often the reverse of something in Blender, so Alt H will unhide. So I've got my seat back. So what I could do is I could copy these legs and rails and reproduce them, but what we are going to use is a modifier called the mirror modifier. Now a modifier is something that allows you to modify your object, but it's normally reversible, so you can turn it off and everything will go back to where it was, or undo it and everything goes back to where it was. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to mirror this front leg first off. So we click on this front leg and make sure that's selected. We have a spanner or wrench if you're an American. We're going to add a modifier. Here's the modifiers. Loads of modifiers we've got. If you can't see them all, then you'll probably have a scroll bar at the bottom which you can scroll down. Ours is in the generate option, and there it is, mirror. Now the mirror modifier allows you to mirror or reflect along the various axes, and it wants to know which object you're going to reflect around. So in our case the seat, so we click on the pipette, click on the seat, and immediately that leg reappears on that side. So we can do exactly the same with this rail here. Add a modifier, mirror modifier, mirror around the seat, and we do exactly the same on the back leg. Add, mirror, pipette, seat. Now we also want, so now we're beginning to look, we've got most of our chair here. We're missing the back rail here. This rail here isn't reproduced over here. So we can mirror that, add, mirror. But this time, of course, we want to mirror not on the x-axis, but on the y-axis. So we'll click that, click on our seat, click on our seat, and hey presto, we've got most of our chair already. So we just need to do the back. Now I notice at the moment that this is very straight, and I wonder if it should be in slightly. So I'm going to click on the back leg. I am going to go into edit mode. I'm going to grab that top face, and I'm just going to move it in slightly on the x-axis. Grab X, and notice the mirrored object is moving at exactly the same time, so they both scaled in slightly, and we did that. Okay, so now I need to do is create this back panel here. So I think this feels like another plane, doesn't it? That'll do. So we'll grab that and we'll move it up on the Z-axis. We'll rotate it around the X-axis. Rotate X 90. There we go. We'll scale it to just on the Z-axis to start with. There's our reference picture. I think it is a bit too wide, so we'll scale it also on our X-axis. It's about that, I think. Okay, so let's look at the side view. Looking good. Zoom in a bit. I want to give it some thickness, so we're going to edit mode, face mode, right click, extrude just on the y-axis. And there's our thickness we want, so we can now grab this and move it back. Whoops, I was in face mode still, back in object mode. Grab it, move it back. Looks about right. Rotate it. You can either rotate it manually. I find it actually easy to use the little gizmo sometimes. Just do it by eye. Looks about right. The easiest way of getting rid of the gizmo is to click up here on the box, and we'll grab it and move it back a little bit more on the y-axis. And I think we have the basis of a chair. Okay. That looking good. So let's get rid of this background. I don't want to see that, so I'm going to click on that and hit delete. I'm finished with it. Right, and let's colour up our chair. So remember, we have with an object selected, we have this little icon here, materials properties. We can add a new colour, but we've already got colours assigned for our tabletop and floor, etc. So we'll make that mahogany. We'll make the seat mahogany. And then we can make everything else table leg. Notice I selected one because I've got the mirrored apply. It's done the other one for me. Exactly the same there. I can do the same with the rails. And I can do the same with that rail there. So, chair's looking pretty good. Now I notice up here, these are our collection areas, and these are all the names of all our objects in our collection. So we've got a camera, we've got a cube, don't know what that is, we've got another cube, we've got a floor, we've got planes all over the place, and it's going to get very confusing unless we start naming things. So let's see what this cube is first. Click on that. Okay, so that's the front leg of our chair. I'll tell you what we'll do first though, is we're going to parent everything up, because remember, if I grab my tabletop, which I can move back in a bit more now, grab and we'll move it just on the x-axis back into our scene. Move the tabletop, the legs come with it. If I do the same with my chair, of course nothing's parented. I haven't got these black dotted lines that tell me they're parented. So I should parent things up, I think, don't you? So do you remember? So we click on our object, which is the child, we shift and click on our parent, and you can see you've got the red orangey line around here and the yellow line around here. It says it's the active object. Right click, parent object. Do exactly the same with the rail. Exactly the same with the rail here. The table's getting in the way a bit, but yeah, I think you can see what we're doing. Parent that. I'm not sure if I parented that. Okay, parent that. And what we haven't parented is the back here. Okay, so now hopefully if I grab, let's just test it, if I grab that and we'll move it around, everything moves together. Great. Right. So here our collection scene has changed. Now this plane here has got all these items attached to it. So that is this chair, and that is all the parts of the chair. So we could start naming things. Now we could double click and give it a name chair. That works well. We could F2, which is edit, as it is in most packages, and we could give this the name of chair leg. We have another cube here, which is the back one. That's another chair leg. So I'm going to F2 and I'm going to put chair leg. And notice that the Blender doesn't like the same name twice, so it's put a 001 behind it. And that's good enough for us. That's quite readable. I've now got the chair rail, so I can get that chair rail. That's another chair rail, and I guess that one is the chair back. So that's all my chair labelled up, and I can obviously minimize that. I will leave you to do the same with the table and name the parts of the table. So hopefully now you've got everything tidy. So all we need to do is duplicate our chair and put it in a nice position, and we are done. So I'm going to grab that, I'm going to give it a little bit of rotation just to make it look artistic. There we go. I think that looks alright. And now we can duplicate this. So if I duplicate now, all I'm going to do is duplicate that object. So I want to duplicate the whole chair. So one way of doing this is use the box tool. So if we do B for box, you end up with this crosshair line thing. And if I highlight the areas I want to do, you can see I've got my orange lines around all my chair, and I've also got it around my floor, and I don't want to duplicate my floor. So easiest way of doing this is if we go into front view, so we can barely see our floor, bring up our box tool again, we'll highlight this area, but make sure that though we've got the chair legs done, we're not going into the floor. And now if we have a look, do that again, I've click off to unbox the tool, sorry, do the front view, box that, and now you see I've only got my chair done. So I can right click and duplicate that, duplicate object, and I want to make sure it stays on the floor, so I'm going to grab it and move it just on the y-axis to start with. Leave it to about there, might be a bit further, let's have a look in a minute. Move it on the x-axis to about there, give it a bit of artistic rotation, and actually I'm quite pleased with that. I think I just want this chair to go back a bit there, so we're going to move that back on the y-axis a bit more. There we go, because I want to put items on here, I don't want the chair to be blocking my view. Okay, we can now save our file, save as. So if we save now, we'll just save over the top of our current version, but if we hit the little plus button, notice it's created a kitchen 1, so you can get revision versions of these. Hope you've enjoyed and learnt something from this tutorial, and if you have, then please support the channel by clicking like. If you want to see other material in this channel, then please subscribe. I have put the Blender Basics interface video on the screen if you haven't already watched it, and the next video in the series, which is on creating a plate and a bowl, is available now. Keep in touch, and I hope to see you soon.